Hello viewers at home and those tuning in on Facebook Live. Thank you once again for joining us on this episode of Dinner Guide. I am your host, Chef Andy, and as I mentioned, we're going to be doing some beautiful dishes this particular month of August, something that you and your family can enjoy together in this very beautiful holiday season. For those of you who are also, who may actually have kids as well, who are home for the holidays, do actually consider welcoming them with something this beautiful. It will actually make it worth the while. But before we get to that part, I'll begin by introducing what we'll be working with today. And I'll start from the very front with a nice big green chili. I've also got some thyme and some mixed herbs. I'm also going to be using some 4 garlic cloves and a bit of chives. You also require about 30 grams of butter, some potatoes that are unpeeled. You'll also require some poppadoms that have been, some chilies that have actually been pickled, some cream, some salt and pepper for seasoning. You'll also require about 250 grams of some tenderloin pork, and last but not least, some coriander to serve and to garnish with. But before we get to that part, I will allow you to freshen up, get ready for the show by getting your pens and papers, and get ready to scribble because there is so much to learn on this show. Don't touch that dial, we'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who missed the introduction, a very simple dish once more. We're going to be working with some fried pork, and I'm also going to show, for some of you who don't know it already, a very simple technique to do jacket potatoes. So I'm going to start off with the potatoes, of course, and for that you will actually require to heat your oven at this particular stage. So we're going to juice up the oven to about 180 degrees, and we're going to allow that some time to cook, to reheat, and we're going to proceed to clean our potatoes. So remember, these are straight from the packet, they haven't been touched, and it's actually the reason why I wanted to show it to you from the beginning. So begin very simply by rinsing those under some tap water. Once nice and clean, proceed to grab some kitchen paper, or you can actually use any cotton cloths that you may have, and proceed to just pat them dry. And once done, we're going to proceed to mix some of we're going to proceed to mix a very simple mixture of butter and parsley. And actually, we're also going to incorporate some fresh coriander, and you're going to be able to see how easily it's done. So for that, I'm going to start off by heating my pan, and to that I will add my 30 to 40 grams of butter, and you should actually give that a few seconds to just reheat. So begin by moving your pan around and proceed to allow that to continue to melt. And while that continues, proceed to grab some of your dried parsley, some of your thyme, grab also a fair handful of some coriander, and proceed to chop that Very, very costly. Of course, making sure to take out the stalks and proceed to chop that. Very, very costly. And proceed to discard the stalks. Now all you're going to do at this stage is add your coriander to your mixing bowl. And once you've got about half of your butter melted down, proceed to turn your heat off completely and continue to move your pan around, and that should allow for you to melt that last knob of butter in your pan. I'm using unsalted butter for this recipe. Once that's done, proceed to pour that into your bowl. And once that's done, proceed to grab a spoon and give that a quick mix. Of course, very importantly, remembering to season your mixture. So, small pinch of salt and a fresh dash of freshly ground black peppercorns. Give that a mix once more. And now this is ready. I'm going to leave that on the side. You'll be able to see what we'll do with that in a little while. Now next up, for your jacket potatoes, very handy to have some aluminium foil. So I'm just going to begin by tearing off about 2 sheets. Now to that, I'll proceed to scoop out a bit of the butter. And all you need to do is just spread that very, very roughly at the center, very, very center of your baking sheet. If you're using a baking sheet, but if you do have aluminum foil, it will work just the same. And now all you're going to do is proceed to cut an incision almost a quarter way into the potato. Turn it sideways and proceed to do the same. Turn it over, 1 incision across and 1 lengthways. Proceed to add that to your bowl and do the same for the rest. Turn it over, once across, once lengthways. Now all you're going to do at this stage is proceed to toss your potatoes in your coriander and butter mixture. And one particular thing to mention for those of you who may not know what a jacket potato is. So a jacket potato first entails cooking a potato with the skin on. It also entails for you to cook it without any particular liquid. Remember, this actually just goes into the oven wrapped up in aluminum, and that beautiful butter there and the bit of moisture inside the potato will allow the potato to cook through. Remember, we've actually salted the mixture as well, so you will actually manage to get the flavors to go really, really through into the center. And another thing to also mention, very handy to do the small incisions on your potatoes, because this is the only way you're going to allow for the steam to actually work through, cook the potato through, and allow the flavors to sink right to the middle. So very simply finish off by tossing those once more and proceed to put 1 piece on each sheet and finish off by scooping the rest of your mixture right over the top of the potatoes. Simple as that. Now next up, we're going to now throw this in the oven, but before we do so, a very, very simple technique of folding. So just grab your sheet of foil from the very corners and proceed to work your way, pulling all 4 corners towards the center of your potato, or rather right over the top of a potato, and begin by just fastening the top very, very simply like a small parcel, and proceed to do the same with the other piece, going right over the top and just lightly twist that over. And now this is going to go into our hot oven. Remember, this has already been preheated. So very, very simply begin to grab a baking sheet, place your potatoes on the sheet and proceed to throw those in the oven. Now for medium-sized potatoes, those should cook for anywhere between 25 to half an hour. But for particularly medium potatoes like this, you may actually start to check between the 15th and the 18th minute. You should almost be ready. We'll take them out. We'll actually open the foil up and then take them back in. We're also going to just season them lightly once more, light drizzle of oil, and then finish them off to get that nice, beautiful jacket cover. But before we get there, we're going to proceed to reheat our pan with the butter once more. So do actually use the same pan to cook your pork. Please don't be tempted to actually switch pans at this stage. Remember, the butter will actually give a nice, beautiful flavor to your pork. And second of all, butter does cost quite a bit of money. So be very, very vigilant about wasting any butter that you're cooking with. So next up, in a hot pan, we're going to add the pork. And using a wooden spoon, I'm going to proceed to split those chunks in the pan. Now at this stage, remember, pork is quite full of fat. So very important to actually allow the pork to cook down in its own fat. So we're going to allow that to continue on the side. And while we do so, I'm going to proceed to chop finely some garlic. Now proceed to chop that very finely. And you can now add that to your hot pan, and that should actually allow for it to give a nice, beautiful aroma for your pork. And now proceed to toss. And at this stage, add a very small drizzle of olive oil. And allow for that to continue browning in your hot pan. And while that continues, we've also got some whipping cream which we're going to proceed to whip really quickly. So for that, you'll require one mixing bowl and of course a whisk. You can alternatively use one of these metallic ones, and you actually get this beautiful plastic variety in your retail stores. So either or doesn't really make a difference. Now all we're going to do is add our cream to the bowl. And using your whisk, we're going to proceed to whisk the mixture. Now this particularly we're going to be using for garnishing our dish, which you're going to be able to see a little later. So this should actually, you can be able to do this a little bit in advance. You can also allow that to sit in your refrigerator and pull it out just when you're about to serve. And of course, very importantly, keep an eye on your pan, continuously tossing together, allowing for a nice, beautiful coloring. Now you can actually avoid using some cream, especially if you've got diners particularly who cannot actually consume any dairy products. Now it should actually be starting to thicken right at the count of about 3 minutes. Of course, making sure to pay attention to your pan. Proceed to toss once more. And of course, also something handy to mention, if you do not have an oven at home to be able to do your jacket potatoes in, you can also do the same process of preparing them, and you can actually lay them around hot coal, especially if you're doing a barbecue on your weekend with your guests or with your family. They will actually cook nice and evenly if you allow them to cook very, very slowly. But as I mentioned, always allow for them to cook really, really slowly, because remember, you're not cooking with any liquid, so you do actually need to allow them a bit of time. So now that your pork is nicely colored, nicely beautiful brown specks there, proceed to turn down your heat and allow for your pork to cook through. So this can only happen when you lower your temperature, so allow that to continue cooking on medium to low heat. And now you can proceed to finish off your whipping cream. Of course, whipping right through till you get to the firm stage. So there is a very simple checkpoint for this, which I'm about to share with you. Now once you get to this beautiful consistency, when it's starting to actually now cuddle up, begin to whip a little more slower, and as soon as you get that clotting effect, and by clotting I mean it should actually start to look like a bit of foam, you should actually be able to grab your bowl and turn it over your surface, and it should actually still hold in the bowl. If you get that far, then you can proceed to stop and set that aside. And now proceed to turn your board around, giving you a nice clean surface to work on. Proceed to mix your pork. And now we're going to proceed to add some of our other ingredients. So I'm going to start with a few teaspoons of this beautifully pickled peppers. So this you can actually be able to do yourselves at home. Very, very simple technique I use here at the studio. Begin by first cleaning your pepper, take out the seeds, chop them into some very, very thin strips, and you can proceed to now grab some vinegar and some water, half to half portions. Mix that together with a bit of salt and a bit of some herbs that you may have. Allow that to sit in your room temperature, or rather in a nice cool location in your pantry, for anywhere between 2 weeks to 4. And by the time you take them out, they should actually be nice, flavored, and very, very tender. You can also alternatively just check in your retail stores out there. There's a very big variety of this coming into the country now. You should actually be able to find one that works for you. Just to bring your attention back, I'm going to proceed to toss everything in the pan. Add a bit of your dried parsley and your thyme. Toss once more. And you can now also proceed to slice in your chili. So very, very simple. Just cut through, right through the center. Also proceed to use your knife to take out the seeds and the membrane on the inside. So very, very simply core right through the edge with the root tip, and proceed to lift off, and do the same thing for the other piece. You can discard the rest. Be sure to also just knock the chili right over your bin. Should actually be able to get those seeds out. And now proceed to just slit that into some very, very thin julienne slices. Of course, making sure to also check on your pan. Give it one more toss and proceed to finish off your chili. Right now, proceed to add that to your pan. And of course, finish off with a bit of some seasoning, small dash of salt, and some freshly crushed black peppercorns. Proceed to toss that once more. Now at this stage you can proceed to turn your heat off completely. Allow the pan to just come to a silent stop. And now your pork is ready to serve. Remember, we do have some jacket potatoes in the oven which we still have to wait for, but before I take those out and show you what they look like once they're done, we are going to take a break and clean up our station, and when we do come back, I'll take you back to the oven. You'll be able to see what the jacket potatoes look like, and we'll go to the last and final segment of the show, which is the plating. So don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are with us before we took the break, we finished this beautiful pork fry, and we're about to just check on our potatoes in the oven. So I'm going to proceed to take them out first. Now these have been cooking for anywhere between 25 to 30 minutes, so do make that alteration if you are taking notes during this recipe. Now we're going to simply lay those out there. Give them a few seconds, and while we do so, we'll proceed to plate our pork. So I'm just going to refresh that by mixing it in the pan and proceed to plate. Now I used pork tenderloin for this recipe, but you are not limited. You can actually use many other cuts of pork. You can also just fry them with the bone on. It doesn't really make much difference. Just do make a reminder, if you're going to be buying pork, of course make sure it's fresh. Do the diligence by making sure that it's actually also very, very particularly fair with fat compared to meat content. And another thing as well, be sure to make sure that it doesn't smell too much like fish or like a very, very dirty kind of smell. That pork is not consumable, and I would recommend please chuck that away if you do come across this. So in goes the pork. Straight onto the plate. And now next up we'll proceed to pull our potatoes off the pan. And with tongs, of course, remember this is very hot. Proceed to open up your foil with the jacket potato. And actually you'll be able to see they're nicely cooled off at this stage. So we're going to proceed to plate those right on the side. And as you can see, it actually holds shape very, very well. Cooked right through to the center, and these are very, very soft and tasty. We'll actually slice one through so that you can actually be able to see it as well. So nicely right through the middle, nice and soft. And as you can see from the color there, it's actually cooked right through to the center, and this is very much ready to serve. But just to finish that off, remember we do have this beautiful bowl of whipped cream that we used a little earlier. Now for that you'll require just a spoon. Very simply. Begin by grabbing your chives and proceed to chop those very finely on your board with a sharp knife. So just about a tablespoon should do for this particular stage. And very simply proceed to scoop a nice dollop of cream right over your potato. I would serve it just like that and finish off by topping that with some chives. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is as easy as done. This is, as I mentioned a little earlier, fried pork. For those of you who missed out on the introduction, fried pork with jacket potatoes. Thank you once again for tuning into the show today. For those of you who are online, don't forget to scroll down to the comment section, leave your comments, inquiries, or any particular issues pertaining the show. We are always ready to listen. Thank you once again from the studios, and until the next episode, have a lovely evening and see you soon.